finished my PhD, which was about the digital divide within the Arab society. And after writing the report for the Israeli Internet Association, I was very concerned of the consequences of the digital gap. And unfortunately, the COVID has reflected, let's say, this image in a very difficult way. I have established the center, the In Digital Center, about 5 years ago, because I really was concerned, and I have expected that the situation will be very complicated and even very dangerous if there will be no intervention in closing the gaps and improving the whole issue of connectivity skills and awareness of the internet among the Arab society. So why this is important? Because all of us know that digital life nowadays means automatically employment, education, about daily life services, and the less digitalization within the societies, which means the more gaps exist, the more poverty, the more unemployment, and the whole society will be, it is already in dangerous. So the situation, I think it is much more about digitalization. It is about social and economical and well-being. Let me share with you basic information about the Arab society, who compose about 21%, but this society is varied in terms of residency and geographical population. And among these, there is also digital gaps. For example, the most difficult situation is among the Arab society in Jerusalem and in the Negev in the south. A serious problem of infrastructure there. The society is also varied in terms of religious groups, but once we look at the same socioeconomical status, we will find no gaps among them, only in the infrastructure. About 80% of the Arab municipalities are ranked in the rank of three and below in the socioeconomical status, which means they are in the bottom of the socioeconomical scale. Another basic information we should know that already exists, and the digital gap have widened it, even in the COVID was even wider than before. About 45 of the Arab families are also below the line of poverty, and about 60%, which I think this is the most dangerous or the most important data, that about 60% of the Arab workers are working in the low basic skills required work, which means that the most damaged population in the COVID-19 was especially this population. I have tracked the whole internet connection and use within the Arab societies for more than a decade. And we can look here at the data of connectivity. The Arab society, we can see that positively, about 84% of the Arabs are connected, but they are connected via mobile. Relatively to the Jewish society, about 91%, there is not huge gap between in terms of basic connectivity, let's say that. But if we look at the connectivity based on computer at home with internet connection, then we can see that only 55% of Arab houses are connected to the internet, have computers and connected to the internet. And just imagine how this can work with when we speak about online learning and distance working. We can see the damage automatically from this basic data. In general, the more educated people, the higher income, the younger the people are, and if they resident in north and center, they are more connected and have more computer and internet connection. When we look at the digital gap, we have to think about three different dimensions. The first one is the infrastructure, which means not only connectivity, but also the quality of the infrastructure, the quality of the internet. The other one is about the skills and the experience that people have. It means that a person have entered the internet use only the last year or last few months, he will not have enough experience to develop himself very quickly. And the third one is about the awareness, but also confidence and trust, which means the trust also with the services or with the offices that give these services. So it is not about just many people look at how many people use the internet. Unfortunately, it is not that easy. It is much complicated, and it includes these three dimensions of digital gap. If we look at the infrastructure within the Arab localities and houses, we can see that most Arab localities have weak and unstable internet connections, which means a lot of, especially during the COVID, I have dozens of lecturers, courses, online courses, and all the time where disconnection with the people have participated in the online sessions. But also slow technical services from the companies. We have two major companies, which hot and basic. Very, very slow technical services they give to the Arab localities. Another issue is about the lack of the Arabic technical support within these companies. So people who, most of the Arab society are, let's say, they don't feel comfortable to ask for technical support in Hebrew. So this is another challenge. And the fourth one is about the limited public internet accessibilities. Means that even though if people have problems in their houses with the internet connection, they don't have many other alternatives to go to, for example, internet cafe or to a culture center, because they themselves have the problem of infrastructure. Another dimensions that we can look at is the municipalities and the local public services. Let's say here, even the population the situation of the population even much more better than these local organizations in terms of in terms of weak infrastructure, old equipment, and even lack of maintenance service. And I'm saying that I have consulted a lot of municipalities and local public services in order to adapt digitalization, and I have saw this and seen this inside this organization. And in this organization, there's still classical services. It means that even the population have the skills to use the digital services. The municipalities and the local organizations mostly don't even have these digital services. A lack of developed management systems within this organization. I have shown, it was a survey that I have even data based for that, high awareness of the importance of digitalization, but unfortunately the skills are very low, and the planning and the budgets also are very low for developing the digitalization within organizations. In this diagram, we can see the use pattern within the Arab society. We can see here that the most used, we have a very high use of social media, about 73%, but very low functional use, which means using for banking and for healthcare and for, let's say, governmental forms. In average 30% before the COVID, these were the percentage of use, which means we have gaps between the use for social media and for the functional use. And this refer to the language issue, to the technical support, to trust and feeling comfortable with the formal services. I have seen a statistic from the Israeli Internet Association during the last month that about 60%, this has increased to about 60% of the Arab society using this functional services, but I can say from within the society that this percentage come from a mutual help within families, but there is no 60% of people who can master and use the functional services. I have published a survey during the COVID in April, and about 1,000 people participated in this survey from the Arab society. And the data says that about 56% reported of infrastructure problems. 57% said that they have only one computer shared for the whole family, which means for distance learning and working on these issues. Most of the teachers lack of digital pedagogy skills, and most of the schools lack of learning management systems. And they have used mostly even social media, WhatsApp and Facebook to communicate with their students. And the result of that only about 30% of the pupils have really joined the online learning. And most of the teaching was based off repeated topics and very classical, even it's online, but was very classical pedagogy, and mostly was based on asynchronous. They sent assignments and so on, but very few synchronous meetings because of the whole challenges of infrastructure and one computer in the family and so on, which means that the consequences of the education because of the digital gap is a serious problem.
Asma, I hate to do this, but we're running short on time.
So I can move very quickly to the end. Let's say if we look at the employment, we can see that how damaged with the Arab society was because the low digital skills, and this means that they were the first that the companies have let's say unemployed them, and it is expected that it will stay the unemployment about 26% in the next year. And I don't know what will be in the next normal after that, but I'm sure that without a serious intervention in infrastructure and in digital divide, the situation will be even more complicated. Maybe I move very quickly to what I think what should be done. I think should be empowering of local digital organizations. We have enough experience with the classical organizations that all the time should improve the digital. And I think that as one who really about a decade studying and working and initiating in this issue, one of them, the most important thing that there is no appropriate organization who leading the digitalization with the Arab society from in the society, from bottom up. So it is about opportunities for new development, because the most governmental, they need, let's say, the classical organization should be a big organization, big businesses with big budgets, but the most business within the Arab society are small business, but very powerful, but they don't have the opportunity to lead let's say long and huge processes, but they can do it, but they don't have the opportunity. So I think it should be an opportunity for those small businesses and small organizations from within the Arab society, because it is about sense of belonging, it's about the language and the cultural accessibility, it's about equal partnership with Jews from equal status to make shared processes. It's about empowering the whole local economy and employment, and working in the whole dimensions that we have mentioned before: infrastructure, equipment, technical support, skills and training, also functional use, but also translating, not only translating services, but the adaptation of these services to be appropriate to the society. So thank you very much. I want to apologize that I will be here only 10 minutes because I have a very special day today. I have my anniversary, so I have to leave 10 minutes. So thank you for being with me in this presentation.
Thank you, Asma. That was a lot of a big overview of a lot of issues. We have one question over the chat, and I want to open it to the field from Sharon Deutsch-Dader. On the survey, how do stats on teacher preparedness compare with the other three educational streams?
I know, let's say if we compare it with the let's say with the general Israeli educational system, yeah, it is lag behind, and because the infrastructure of the schools is really very, very weak, years along, and this was not enough developed the whole years, but also the whole development courses, they unfortunately they were very classical. They haven't really seen the next, even without the pandemic. This was that's what should be the normal development that should be. There are many models that we are offering, pedagogical, new pedagogical digital models, but unfortunately, very, very classical processes is still there.
I want to invite other questions and also sneak in my own. About infrastructure gaps, what we've been hearing consistently is that because internet is provided by private sector, it's not necessarily profitable for HOT or Bezik to connect Arab society, and that the Ministry of Communication can only do so much. How have you been thinking about ways to create incentives or to ensure enforcement for 100% national coverage?
So I think it should be really the communication ministry that should push this forward and make it for the two main companies, Bezik and HOT. But I think that from our experience now should be more maybe local organizations that should be funded, should be empowered in order to push this forward, because they know very, very well the situation of the Arab localities.
Any other question from the room for Asma? Okay, Asma, thank you so very much. Happy anniversary. And I'm so pleased to introduce Jesse Rosenblatt. Please, the floor is yours, from Digital Israel, Digital Project Manager and Director of International Relations.
Hi, thank you very much. Asma, great to hear you speak again. I want to thank everybody for being on the call and giving us an opportunity to present. Can everybody see my presentation now?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So my name is Jesse from Digital Israel. Digital Israel was created in 2014, and as part of a government resolution that basically Israel realized we need to start getting the public sector a little bit closer to how the private sector acts in terms of services to citizens, and getting a piece of the digital revolution and the benefits it provides for the public sector and the way we operate. And since then, we started in the Prime Minister's office, and we moved over to the Ministry for Social Equality over the last 5 years. And recently, after the newest government was formed, we became part of a new ministry called the Ministry of National Digitalization. But our vision has never changed. And so basically, a lot of times when you hear something with the word digital, you think of a technological organization. And in fact, we're actually a social organization within government. And what we're doing is we're trying to harness the benefits of the digital revolution in order to improve and reduce socioeconomic gaps, to create accelerated economic growth, and to create a smarter, friendlier government. And basically, all of our projects focus in on that. And so in that train of thought, we have a lot of areas that we deal with across government. But specifically today, I wanted to talk to you about digital literacy, obviously, and specifically about how we view the digital gap that exists generally, and then we'll do a drill down into the Arab population of Israel. So we look at digital literacy from a skills angle, meaning we're not dealing with equipment, and we're not dealing with whether we should be buying tablets or computers or laptops for kids in schools or for communities. We're dealing with what skills are needed to navigate the digital environment of the 21st century. And I'll focus on the four main skills that we've sort of focused on. We sort of learned, we didn't try to create this ourselves. We sort of piggybacked on work that was done in the UK. And we defined four basic skills that we've tried to focus on when we're teaching digital literacy. The first is problem solving. The second is transacting. The third is communicating. And the fourth is managing information. And basically all of the projects we're doing in digital literacy are sort of offshoots of one of those four basic digital skills, which we sort of interpret as if people can use the internet, use computers, use digital technology to do basic problem solving, to do transactions, whether it's e-commerce or doing their banking or buying something, ordering something from the supermarket online. If they can communicate on social media, and if they know how to manage information, they know how to see information and understand that it's information that they can trust and for instance, not fake news or things like that. On those basic levels, then that's the sort of basic digital literacy we hope to get the entire population of Israel on the same page about. And so when you break down, I'm sorry that the fonts are a little bit off. If you break down the digital literacy gap, so what we're looking at is we're talking about the population that's 20 and over. Why 20 and over? Up until the age of 18, digital literacy is dealt with by the Ministry of Education. And then from 18 to 20, a lot of Israelis are in the army. And so the data is a little bit less consistent. And so basically what we have is we have from the National Census, the Census Bureau, we have information from the population that is 20 years and up. And so we see that of almost 900,000 people, about 16% of Israeli adults do not use the internet. And if you break down the 900,000, you see that there are three main groups. One group is the ultra-Orthodox population, who has about a little over 200,000 people that are not online, so about 23% of those 908,000 people. About 40% of them are senior citizens, and about almost 30% are the Arab citizens of Israel. So it's a pretty big gap. And when you do another drill down, wow, I'm really sorry. I did the PowerPoint presentation on my computer at work, and now I'm presenting on my laptop, and apparently I have a missing driver. So it's creating, the fonts are way off and everything is sort of spilling over, but I'll translate the English in the slide for you. Basically, what we're looking at here is the blue is 2014 data, and the orange is 2018 data. And so in 2014, we see that almost 500,000, about 500,000 senior citizens were not online. 4 years later, that number was down to 380,000. In the Arab population, it was about 400,000 people, the adults 20 and over that were not online. That's down to about 250,000. The ultra-Orthodox population almost stayed static, a difference of 8,000. And then other is basically Jewish citizens of Israel who are between the ages of 20 and 65, who are neither Arab nor ultra-Orthodox. And there you see the gap is almost non-existent, which in a lot of ways we'll be able to explain in a few moments. Now we're going to get into a comparison of, into a comparison of the general population, and then a breakdown for ultra-Orthodox, the Arab population, and senior citizens, but breaking down by what the people are using the internet for. So if you're searching for information, so the general 77% of the general population is using the internet to search for information. And out of the three groups that are the least digitally literate in society, the Arab population has the highest mark at 65%. Obviously, we want to raise that higher, but it's significantly better than the ultra-Orthodox population and senior citizens. In terms of using email, online banking, e-commerce, and e-government services, the Arab population is very low. Email is sort of borderline, but it's pretty close to the ultra-Orthodox and senior citizen population, but it's much lower than the general population. But online banking, all three of them are very low. E-commerce, all three of them are very low. E-government services, all three are very low. The exception is social media, where the ultra-Orthodox, for cultural reasons, are not on social media at all. Senior citizens are getting there a little bit more, and there are reasons for that. And the Arab population is very close to where the general population is in terms of using the internet for social media. Now breakdown in terms of, we saw those same numbers where the Arab population is at right now. Let's see not only where they are compared to the general population, but where they have been moving, where the trend is going. So since 2014 and now looking at 2018, the percentage of the Arab population that uses the internet to search for information has risen significantly. Emails basically stayed the same. Online banking, e-commerce, and e-gov services, a small rise, but not amazing. But social media has skyrocketed in the last 4 years. And what's interesting, and probably this is one of the main reasons for all the data we just saw, is that the Arab population compared to the Jewish population uses computers much less and uses smartphones much more. And that sort of ties into a lot of the infrastructure issues that Asma mentioned. A lot of the infrastructure issues, the internet issues are problematic, but in Israel, smartphones are, well, the smartphones themselves are pretty expensive, but cell phone plans are pretty cheap. And so a lot of young people have smartphones. And when you have a smartphone, it's very easy to be on social media. It's very easy to search for information. Email, honestly, is also pretty easy, which is why it's maybe not as high as we'd like it to be, but it's much higher than these. But online banking, e-commerce, e-gov services, you have to be pretty comfortable to put your credit card information in your phone. There's a certain level of familiarity that we're still working on teaching skills to certain segments of the population, that I think these numbers will rise if we look in 2024, even 2022, but we have a lot of work to do in these areas. So what are the barriers? So one is, in terms of the government services, one is a lot of services are not translated into Arabic. It's something the government's working on, getting them translated into Arabic, and not only translated into Arabic, but translated well into Arabic. Two, lack of infrastructure, which Asma already mentioned. And there's also low confidence in government services. By the way, that's not only the Arab sector, it's also the entire population of Israel has very low confidence in government services. As somebody who works for government, I don't take full responsibility because it's not my job, but I can understand why. It's something that the government, as part of its response to COVID, has actually pushed through several government resolutions to improve digital services to the entire population. Obviously, as part of that, it will be improve digital services to the Arab population. A lot of major life events will be going fully online, and the government will start being more proactive. Things such as when somebody passes away in the family, when people get married, when they get divorced, when there's a birth in the family. These major life events that around them, there are a lot of benefits, there are a lot of services that you need the government for. So we're trying to create seamless digital services where you have an interaction with the government one time and create it as frictionless an interaction as possible. So what are we doing in terms to improve that digital gap that we discussed? So one is one of our major flagship projects in digital literacy is something called digital communities. Basically, we realized we know the skills we want to teach. We know who the parts of the segments of the population are that we want to reach out to. But the question is, if we're not going to be focusing on infrastructure, if we want to focus on skills, well, we still need some type of basic infrastructure. We still need something. People still need to be able to go online with something. Smartphones obviously are nice, but they're not always the best device to actually teach digital skills. And so what we learned from a project that was actually done in Liverpool in the UK about almost a decade ago now, I think it was in 2011 or 2012, is something called digital communities. The idea is that you harness, you enlist all of the different actors that live in a community, the community center, the library, different organizations that might have a few computer terminals. You get volunteer organizations, whether it's Boy Scouts, if we're going to use American terminology, or youth groups, or a shul group, whoever it is, and you get them when they're willing to volunteer anyway. You get private companies that want to do their own corporate responsibility activities once a month, and you get them to volunteer in their own communities, teaching digital skills. So you train volunteers. The government's actually creating the curriculum, which is all pretty basic standard stuff. We're creating these short online courses teaching basic digital skills based on the 4 skills and sort of their own offshoots. the 4 digital skills I talked about before: transacting, managing information, communicating, etc. And so we're providing the course material. We're mapping out where there's actually infrastructure in the communities. We're bringing the volunteers and connecting them with people in the community that are looking to learn digital skills. And then we're sort of creating mentor programs. We're creating volunteer programs in schools with elderly people in the communities. And so, so far what we did is we're doing a pilot project in Jerusalem. Why Jerusalem? Because Jerusalem has all those communities that I talked about. It has a significant senior citizen population. It has a large ultra-Orthodox population, has a large Arab population. And so we chose a few communities within Jerusalem that we're doing our pilot project on. And obviously, we're not just doing it alone. It's not just government. We're partnering with local authorities. We're partnering with the Joint on a lot of these digital literacy programs. It's not something that we're able to do alone. The idea behind the Digital Communities Project is actually a multi-partner initiative. Another example of something we did, a more localized project, was we sort of did a pre-pilot project in Hura. A lot of different government ministries were putting a lot of funding and effort into raising up the community in Hura. And so when we worked on digital literacy, before we started the project in Jerusalem, so we had 450 participants. By the end of the course material, over 90% were using email. 90% will admitted that they'll start using other online services. 94% said that they'll teach somebody else. That's part of the digital communities program, is you teach one person, but then they have to commit to teach one other person. And that's how we keep passing it along. 84% asked to continue the meetings even after our funding ran out. So we felt that those were major indicators of success. One other thing I wanted to mention is on a totally different tack, not related to digital literacy. One of the things Digital Israel does is we provide funding for local authorities across Israel, and obviously in a large part to local authorities that have large Arab communities, whether they're mixed communities like Yafo or Akko, or whether the local authorities are the entire population is Arab population. And so some of the things we do is we teach employees. We created webinars to teach employees in the local authorities how to use remote work skills, meaning how to use Zoom, how to do things online, how to use Google Docs and shared documents and things like that. The other thing we did is we've been funding digital infrastructure for the local authorities, whether it's allowing online payments. A lot of them didn't have websites. They didn't have paying the Arnona tax, the local authority tax. You could do it. They weren't able to do it online for their citizens. Citizens would have to go to the post office or go to the local authority. Now more and more are able to do it online from their home. Some of them didn't have a basic CRM. So those are the types of things we funded to try to create a very basic line of digital capabilities at the municipal level, and with the understanding that if the local authorities have those basic tools, they'll be able to provide better services to their residents in those towns. And finally, the Advanced Digital Initiatives tender is actually something a little bit different. It's sort of, we're allowing grassroots ideas coming from the local authority, meaning they say, hey, we have a great idea for a digital initiative we want to do. And then they present it to us with sort of a work plan and a proposed budget, and then we'll approve up to 3 for each municipality based on a series of criteria. And so that's sort of to allow them initiative to take their own future in their hands. And instead of just being reliant on us to say, this is what we'll provide, we say, hey, if you guys have a great idea, come to us and we're gonna have your back. We're gonna support you. Yep, okay, that was the last slide I had. So I hope I kept to the time limit. I was trying to be very concise and on point.
Thank you, Jesse. Before we're going to move on very quickly, can you speak a little bit, the communities initiatives that you spoke about, I'm sure were serving individuals during Corona. Can you say a couple of words about how much?
Yeah, obviously, during Corona, obviously we wanted to, it's a little bit difficult. Digital skills is one of those things that it's hard to do from afar if you haven't taught the very basic building blocks to people. The people that we were sort of already in contact with, we didn't need to stop providing learning material, but obviously it was a bigger challenge. We understand that COVID created a ton of challenges, even for people that are digitally literate. Just I'm thinking in my own job that I work in Digital Israel and I'm a digital project manager, that now no face-to-face meetings, only on Zoom, sharing screens, having it's a totally different world, and it's a huge, huge challenge. We're rethinking some of our course material, obviously. One of the things I didn't mention is we have, there's a national platform for digital learning called Campus, which is something that the government provides. It's sort of basically the Israeli version of edX. It's based on edX technology, but it's obviously translated into Hebrew. And the government and universities are putting a lot of course material on there. And our courses for teaching digital literacy are on campus. It provides a lot of benefits, like being able to measure very exactly for each learner where, you know, where they're going wrong, what answers we need to change, what people aren't understanding. We still have a lot of work to do. COVID has definitely thrown a wrench into the way we were approaching this challenge, but we're figuring it out.
Thank you. Please stay on for the Q&A, and I'm going to invite Hiba, Isela, and Mira Zohar to talk about their work bridging these gaps in the recent period. Please. Thank you, Jesse.
Hi, everyone. I will start. So I'm Hiba from Joint-ELKA, and I'm going to tell you about my perspective from a person who is from East Jerusalem. Like Asma and Jesse mentioned, Jerusalem has an issue with all the gaps in digitalization and also in Hebrew language. So only 4% of the population knows Hebrew well enough to read or understand formal Hebrew needed to deal with day-to-day tasks done online. Much of the Arab population is in all of Israel also lacks skills of Hebrew literacy which prevent or hinder their participation in Israeli society. I am a Hebrew speaker. I taught myself Hebrew when I was after high school because I was obviously understood that I need Hebrew to live well in Jerusalem. I had to know the language. It's not the same for all the population in East Jerusalem. So when the corona pandemic hits us, the need to do ordinary things online become more critical than ever. Knowing I speak and understand Hebrew well, everyone around me starts to come to me to ask me to help them in all the things that they had to do. Teachers who needed to start teaching through Zoom, they come to me because they didn't know even English or Hebrew well enough to learn this by themselves. People that needed to file for employment because they lost their jobs due to Corona came to me to help them fill out of the forms, which are obviously in Hebrew. The guidelines and instructions of the health ministry were also in Hebrew, and people didn't understand what they are allowed or not allowed to do. So in Joint-ELKA, we have a unit that has been dealing with promoting digitalization, sorry for my English, of the public sector for several years. Among other things, we trained dozens of government officials and municipal professionals to become digital leaders who work to reduce social gaps through digitalization. Overnight, this need became vital for every professional and every organization. If you could adjust to work remotely, you would survive and provide essential help to those who need it most. So I came to my manager and shared her with my experience that Arabs lack accessible information that they can understand that will help them survive this crisis, both professionally and as a society. So our team then understood that now more than ever, we had to do something. It was time to use our expertise in digitalization and the partnerships that we already have with government, municipalities, and civil society to address the growing need of closing the digital gaps for Arab society. It was the call for the Corona hour. From my professional perspective, I clearly saw the importance of this mission, and I'm so proud to know that I brought it to my management and my contributing to make a difference for my society. Mira Zohar has been my partner throughout this period of time, and she will describe some of the things that we have done in the past 3 months to start addressing these needs. So Mira Zohar, the mic is yours. You can continue.
Thank you, Hiba. So as you can understood, Hiba helped us to realize that that we have an urgent mission in the short, immediate term. We need to raise the awareness of all the social services providers that they need to make their services accessible also to the Arab population in Israel. The process to making information accessible to Arab society by different government offices and municipality can be measured in the stage of advancement. Jesse spoke about the poor translation of information, but this is just the first stage of advancing culturally adapting services. So as we said, the first stage was to translate the materials. This translation sometimes done unprofessionally using the basic function of Google Translate with no editing, that even Arab speakers will not be able to understand the meaning. The next stage is accessibility, and the most advanced stage is actually designing services in culturally adapted to the Arab society. This is something different than translate, is to think that we have a society that they have their own needs and also their own barriers, as we heard from Jesse and Asma. The health ministry is an important example in this time. It was more advanced because they understood that making information clear, clear, accessible, and available is saving life. So they were the first ministry that do this project very fast. As we compare it to the other ministries that was less advanced, they lack awareness that not all the Arab society is like Hiba. As you can mention, Hiba is exceptional professional that speak 3 languages almost fluently. Not all the Arabs are like this, but the managers that work in the government ministries thinks that all the Arabs can use Hebrew in the website, in the government website, and it's not like that. Most of the, just a minute. Okay, most of the offices lack resources which include money, knowledge, skill to create culturally adaptive services and make them easily accessible to the Arab population. After we realized that this challenge, one of the things we did was planned implement series of webinars targeting the director of government offices and municipality, customer services management, all the IT and the digital services professional that working with the public sector and focusing on how to make digital services accessible and create culturally adapt services for the Arab population in Israel. This is what we did. We held 4 webinars once a week. Attendance was higher than we expected, to say the truth. Up to 100 professionals per session, and many more asked for the recording after the webinars. The participants include professionals from Ministry of Health, Transformation, Education, social equality, economy, justice, and also Ben-Gurion University and other academic institutes, and also, of course, the civil society organizations such as Akim and B'Terem and Tapuach and Machshava Tova. We are now, and on those days after we finish the webinars, nowadays we are creating playbook on how to create digital services to the Arab society. Of course, we do it with our partners in Digital Israel, ICT, and other partners from the public sector and the third sector. We now understand that we have an opportunity to make a significant impact. There is an opportunity that the all main stakeholders understand that we must create inherent change in the way that the public sector serve our Arabic citizen in Israel. Maybe you heard in the last 3 weeks, there was an historic government decision. It's called 260, that the Ministry of National Digital Israel, it's Digital Israel and the ICT, and also the Prime Minister office, and also the finance office. All 4 of them sat together. Jesse know about it, of course, and they decide to promote digital services to all citizens and specific to a population that need more efforts, like Arabs, like ultra-Orthodox, like older people, and so on. And as you can understand from what we share with you, this is not an opportunity that we plan to miss. We focus in a short term and do some project in the short term, and we are keeping working on the long term also. I will stop here, and then if you want to ask, we can give you an answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and really thank you to the speakers and for sticking to such short time frames, and to all the participants for staying on. I know a lot of people have to jump off at 1. I just want to, there are questions about what philanthropy can do, and there's questions about job training. And I want to say, I just want to emphasize that the focus on services and skills on this call, even though so many issues are burning, are because the difference at what Mira and Hiba are talking about in terms of making sure that a government office has forms available in Arabic is the difference between a family receiving its unemployment benefits and a family going hungry under this period. And so under the prioritization in Corona, where everything became more urgent, there were many organizations that really focused on making sure that whether it was creating the webinars such as Joint-ELKA and Untitled Israel did for public institutions, or whether it was smaller organizations who locally went to individuals and helped them navigate forms, the way that Hiba did to her family. There are many organizations that set up supports for their regionally and locally in their community to help individuals navigate through Zoom and navigate through forms and be able to access their benefits and survive during this period. I just posted a link on the chat that is a primer on digital gaps that covers some of these basic issues, some of this basic data. It also has a document, a civil society mapping that is ongoing. We're going to update ongoing about different organizations working on this issue. Now, please, questions for whoever can stay in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. And then I would also like to, before we go, make sure Adina and Joan can speak about Learning Forum and what they're planning to do in this area. So I invite the room, and if there are none, then I will invite, I know that what Adina and Joan will talk about will answer Edna's question in part. So Adina, Joan.
Is that our cue? I guess.
That is your cue. I wanted to, people have been listening for so long.
Yeah, so I'm pleased that Joan is on the call as well as I think Ramin and Liana from my philanthropic team.
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
And it really was a pleasure to hear all of the speakers. I think we're familiar with the various programs through different other hats, but it's always an eye-opener. And one thing that it really stresses from our perspective in philanthropy is that we have to have a great deal of humility because we don't know enough of what is happening on the ground. So we really need to be listening to what the vibes are from the ground. And one of the things that has come to us as a foundation that receives a variety of different grants and requests, and especially during this emergency time, is precisely that I think all of the speakers touched on, that there isn't just one need within the general need of the digital gaps in the education system. So even if I narrow it down to education, right, or mandatory education in the Arab population in Israel, there's not just one thing. It's not just providing computers. It's not just providing the infrastructure. It's not just the skills. It's the parents, it's the teachers. There's a multitude of different things. And in order to see how to address this, there's no one in philanthropy, I don't think, has the capacity to do it. A lot of it has to do with government, and a lot of it has to do with collaboration between different funds, with government, and with those who are active on the ground. So what we see our role in, yes, I mean, we do all, obviously we're grant makers, so we have our grants and we're exploring what grants we're interested in within a multitude of, we sort of map the different needs that we've identified through speaking to the agencies that we support and other agencies that we're in touch with. And we came up with, I don't know, I think a list of at least 20. And so we have our own priorities, but we also thought to use our role as a convener and to sit with other foundations and to reach out together with the government and to the nonprofits or educators and parents on the ground in order to see in the short term and in the long term how we can impact this field. So if all of us are funding different things and doing different things, and there's a lot of trial and error during this time, can we identify what the low-hanging fruit are that we can sort of snatch in the short term and impact significantly with funds? And can we also use our resources in order to try and think more strategically and systematically using the experiences on the ground while looking on a 3 to 4 year, let's say, range, in order to come up with a plan or best practices, or to work with the government in order to see how some of these gaps can be bridged, and come up with a program that actually is not only bridging the gaps, but also adapting the education system to the 21st century that should be done across the board, probably even globally. So that's in a nutshell. I don't know if anyone from my team wants to add anything to that, but I'm being mindful of people's time as well.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to bringing this to the American Jewish funders and working together. Anybody else have questions on questions that you'd like to raise to the room? Any of the speakers, or just in general on these issues? What are your concerns? What have been your concerns? Then in that case, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I hope it was informative, and we look forward to reaching out with additional calls, diving deeper into aspects of these issues.
Thank you, Liron, for organizing this.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Liron.
Thank you, all the speakers.
Really.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You want us to stay for another minute?
No, I'll talk to you in WhatsApp. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
See you. Thank you very much.